If there's one thing that you could do better, what would it be and why?
Welcome to episode 10 of Better PR Now. Today we're joined by Jered Martin, co-founder of OnePitch. OnePitch, a Southern California startup, holds the promise of making life a whole lot better for both journalists and publicists. Let's find out how. We're really excited to have with us Jered Martin. He's got a fascinating history, and he's involved right now in a startup that has a lot of promise to make life better for both publicists and journalists. Before we get into that, though, I'd like to find out some more about Jered's background and bring us up to speed on how he got to where he is today. So, Jered, welcome to the podcast.
Mark, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on here, and I really am excited to chat about not so much myself, but a lot more about OnePitch, and of course, kind of educate some folks about the issues we're seeing and know that a lot of people are experiencing in communications and public relations.
Absolutely.
In general.
So let's go back to the beginning. You grew up in Orange County, beach kid, I guess. Grew up surfing?
Yeah, you nailed it on the head. I didn't necessarily grow up at the beach per se. But my childhood definitely revolved a lot around going to the beach and essentially just kind of being outdoors and being an active kid. I was probably one of the few that never wanted to be inside and play video games. I was always outdoors, like you said, either at the beach or in the front of my house kicking the soccer ball or playing hockey in the street or something like that. So it's definitely something that I take pride in, especially when I see kids nowadays and they're kind of glued to their phone or glued to a gaming console or something like that, you know?
Excellent. So you grew up in the land of gracious living. You went to Cal State Long Beach, where you majored in communications and marketing, and then you went to work. And I'm going to skip over some things, but at one point you ended up working as an operations chief for Byte San Diego before you moved into the current role that you have as co-founder of OnePitch along with Beck Bamberger. Can you fill in the details for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, I did graduate from Long Beach. I got a BA in communication studies with a minor in marketing. And that essentially kind of started my journey from Orange County down to San Diego. And I was fortunate enough to get connected with Beck in late 2013. And from there, just kind of worked a little bit outside of what I was doing with her. I was actually working at a digital marketing agency and just wasn't quite enjoying the work that I was doing and wanted a little bit more of an impact in what I was doing and where I was at. And that kind of led me to pursue a couple more conversations with Beck, which ultimately led to me being hired on as an intern at Byte and then kind of work my way from intern to part-time to full-time to eventually leading all of the operations and managing the team of tour guides, as well as a whole array of other stuff over there.
So for any listener who might not know what Byte San Diego is, can you give them a quick update on that?
Sure. The best way to explain it is that it is a walking food tour. And to even go further than there, it's basically a city tour with history. And along the way, you're stopping at local restaurants, you're getting little bites of food from them and learning more about the cuisine that they serve. And the whole idea is that it's for locals or people who are visiting to just learn more about the area and enjoy some good food along the way.
That sounds awesome. Sounds potentially fattening too. Sign me up.
Well, when you've got about 6 to 7 different places that you're going to within a 3 to 4 hour period, you can imagine by the 5th or 6th, you're starting to get a little full there.
So you obviously have been interested in communication for a long time. You majored in it. What was it that drew you to working in communication to begin with?
It's kind of interesting. I can't really pinpoint an exact time or even a specific event that really piqued my interest. One thing that I know that I love and I enjoy doing is not only connecting with people, but also helping them in some way, shape, or form. I'm sure if you asked friends of mine or colleagues, they'd probably tell you that I'm always kind of thinking of people first. And so that's kind of what led me into my career. And it's kind of interesting, just because a lot of folks, want to say, oh yeah, I want to help people and I want to change the world. And I know that I'm doing that, but I know that I have, an overarching goal that I got to start small and eventually work to something bigger and something to a larger scale. So simply put, I love talking with folks and I love connecting with them and helping them out.
you've been doing this work for a while. What do you know now that you wish you had known when you first started?
Oh, that's a great question. I think most importantly is that you can't ever assume something. That's first and foremost. Is assumptions are not safe, and it's a pretty straightforward answer, but I think a lot of people take it for granted. And one of the specifics that I really think about is just communicating with folks digitally and how much gets lost in translation. And I think the most important part is just to remember to be clear and concise. With all the technology that we have and the different mediums of communication, I think a lot of times we kind of get caught up in assuming people know how to do something or understand something because we do. And that's not always the case. And I think, not only being patient and making sure that if somebody doesn't understand something, that you are being, more articulate and explaining it in a way that they understand is really important. Because again, it's good when you're on the same page, but it just helps the whole process flow better, from beginning to end. And really, I think people appreciate when you're willing to take a moment just to make sure that they get it and understand exactly what you're explaining.
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell you what, with a lot of the communication tools that we use now, whether it's email or text, you miss the nonverbals, you miss the inflection of the voice, and it's really easy to misinterpret what somebody means. So it is really important to be paying attention to that, and as you said, not to make assumptions. That actually reminds me of, I don't know if you've ever read the book, The Four Agreements. One of the agreements is don't assume anything. If you're not sure, if somebody didn't tell you exactly what they mean, don't assume that you do. So that's terrific advice.
Not to elaborate further, I was just going to mention the four agreements is something that my boss, Rebecca Bamberger, she's very big on and is constant kind of reminding us. So it's funny, as soon as you mentioned that, I had a little light bulb go off, and I'm like, yep, I know exactly what you're talking about.
That's awesome. So as you've been practicing communications, you've seen people do it really well, and you've probably seen people do it not so well. What's one of the smartest things that you've ever seen somebody do? One of the smartest communication, public relations, or marketing moves that really stands out for you? One example that I always go back on, and I would say this is definitely a really great brainstorm campaign that was developed. I believe it was by Burger King, and they tapped into the Google Home and Alexa with a commercial that they put out. And it essentially, I don't remember the specifics, but I recall that it kind of, as soon as the commercial came on, it actually caused, if you had one of those devices in your room, to respond. And it was kind of a joke, and people ended up getting really upset about it. But again, to me, just leveraging technology is so important. And especially when you have something new that people aren't quite familiar with, or they maybe are not completely comfortable using, and really kind of not pressuring them, but kind of nudging them in that direction. I thought that was just genius. And I would love for us to be able to do that with OnePitch, something that I recall again that I thought was just ingenious on their team side, and again use technology to essentially promote something that they were trying to get people to order. I believe it was like for a sandwich or something like that. But that was really cool to see, and really cool to kind of follow along as you heard feedback from people that were both favorable and unfavorable of how it was affecting their time inside their house or at their office. It's a very creative approach. So what was your reaction to it? Was it a positive reaction or a negative reaction?
I thought it was genius. I don't own a smart home device, so I wasn't one of the ones who fell victim to having it go off when the commercial went off. But for me, having my background in marketing, one thing that I've really been very interested in is advertising and ways that we can not necessarily trick somebody, but essentially get them to ask themselves something that they maybe would have not before, or maybe wouldn't have thought of. Yeah. And to me, that was just a great way, again, to leverage technology to, essentially kind of ask a question, or to kind of, again, push somebody forward to doing something they maybe wouldn't have considered doing.
Absolutely. Before. And it becomes discussion worthy. So, if you have that experience, you're probably going to tell somebody about it, and you're probably going to tell them on a social platform. So now the brand starts to get some traction that, hey, did you hear about this thing? One that struck me in a similar vein, and which I thought was pretty clever this week. I don't know if you've watched the Netflix series Stranger Things. They did a home screen takeover with the Mashable.com website where once you're on the site for about 10 seconds, the whole thing goes dark gray and all the images and text flips upside down so that you're in the upside down, which is part of the story, the ongoing storyline there, which I thought was really clever, but not annoying. They gave you a button you could click to get out of it, and if you didn't, it would revert back to the original pretty quickly. But I thought super clever. So, what advice would you give to CEOs or other business leaders to help improve their communication programs?
I would say first and foremost that having some type of internal messaging tool is super helpful. And one of the reasons I mention that is because, for example, my team uses Slack, and my boss, Rebecca, is on Slack. My interns are on Slack. I'm on Slack. And it's just a great way to keep everyone on the same page. If it's a phone call that we got up of, you can just quickly throw in a little note there, and everybody is now caught up. It doesn't need to have a formal meeting. We don't need to send out an email or anything like that. It's just very quick, easy, and to the point. And I think the reason, more so to your question, why CEOs should adopt something like this is because sometimes they kind of get lost in the mix of things, or they're a little more removed than most folks, especially when you're at that level. And so it's helpful to stay in the know, especially like with where I'm at, where I'm reporting everything that's going on to my CEO and founder, but then ultimately she's still making decisions based off of that stuff. So without an internal messaging, I'm not able to reach her when she's in New York, or if she's in Mumbai traveling for a couple of weeks. So it's kind of great just to be able to have a tool that's a little bit quicker than email, for example, but again, can just easily get everyone on the same page with just a simple message.
Oh, that's wonderful. How often do you meet with your boss face to face if she's traveling so much, and how important is the in-person communication?
In person is key, and it goes back especially to your point about the nonverbals and being able to kind of pick up on that. I meet with my boss at least twice a week in person when she's in town. Typically, we're meeting on Mondays, and we do kind of our one-on-one internal, let's kind of gather what's going on with the company and what we're going to be focusing on for the next week or so. And then we actually have a secondary meeting where we bring in more team members. And that's more so like the nitty gritty as far as like, what are our numbers at? How is, advertising performing, so on and so forth. So I think definitely at least once a week is really helpful to have that face to face. Again, just because, you have so many things going on, especially at a startup, that you may forget to mention something, or, you may see somebody and that might remind you of, oh, okay, I need to, talk to you about this, or, hey, I wanted to share this with you, and I didn't necessarily think it needed to be sent in an email or, sent in some other form. So again, I would definitely say that face-to-face communication is really important. And from a morale standpoint, it's also really beneficial just to have that time with your senior level supervisors or with the CEO and founder, again, just because they can be removed from certain things. So to have them a little more available and to be able to bring up, something that's going on with work is super helpful. And one thing I'm really fortunate about is that my CEO is really, really great at being able to provide expertise for work and kind of personal development expertise. I'm sure I'm not the only one in saying that I'm not perfect at my job. I'm not the best that I could be. I know that. I know there's plenty of room for improvement. And so having the time with her is really helpful and beneficial for me to not only build myself as a person, as an individual, as a professional, but also to be able to gain knowledge and insight from her, since she's been in it for so long and has some really great advice and tips to help me kind of better lead my team or to better myself again as an individual.
None of us really are. I was going to say none of us are perfect, but none of us are even close to perfect. And that's particularly challenging in public relations and marketing because everything keeps changing. So the way we communicate keeps changing, technology keeps changing, society is changing. And so we should always be in learning mode. It's really refreshing to hear of leaders who are also in mentoring mode. So it's not just about improving their own game, but it's about improving the people that are on their team. And it sounds like Beck is doing that as well for you and the rest of the OnePitch team.
Yeah, no, she's hands down, like I said, the level that she works at, the capacity that she's able to work at is seriously impressive. And I've not met many people who can operate consistently at that level. And again, she's got a PR firm that she runs with 20 plus employees along with OnePitch. And just the fact that she has the time to devote to everyone is really impressive. And it speaks a lot about her and just how much she really cares about her team and is willing to, again, devote that time to us.
And that's BAM Communications, right?
Yeah, correct. BAM Communications, the PR firm.
Terrific. So looking out at the communications landscape, is there something that particularly excites or frustrates you right now that's going on out in the world?
Yeah, I think a little bit of both. One thing that I really, I always fall back on, and I think that we've kind of summarized a couple of times, is just the authenticity of communication. And I'm a little frustrated just to see that it's kind of being questioned. One thing that I always relate back to, especially as of late, are these chat bots that I always get messages from. And I really appreciate a person and being able to talk with a person, not only to have, a name associated in a face, but to have voice. And so, one thing that I am excited about is to be able to provide that for our customers at OnePitch. One thing that we pride ourselves on is a high level of customer service and also personalization. And so for me, I'm excited to be able to take my passions and the things that I enjoy doing and, extend those to our users and to our team, and to essentially, really make people feel like we're paying very close attention to them and that they're important and that we care, if their story gets coverage. And if it doesn't, that we're able to provide helpful insight as to why and to educate them how to do it better the next time.
And that's a very hands-on process.
Absolutely. I think you could probably gather from me that I have a lot of customer service experience. And so that's definitely plays into key. And again, I think what I'm most excited about is to be able to just take what I know and what I've learned thus far from a ton of feedback from journalists and publicists and really be able to, again, educate our users and show them that we have a new tool that's super helpful, very beneficial for their industry. And again, be able to educate them just as far as best practices and what journalists want to see, how they want to see it, and really kind of change how the industry talks to one another in the most basic sense.
Certainly. There's been a no end of articles recently about AI and chatbots and how those are working together, particularly in areas like customer service. So when you call a customer service line, frequently you're actually talking to a bot, or when you're on an online chat talking to a bot. And it seems like there is this increasing divergence from companies that want to try to automate all that to save costs, and the companies that are willing to put the effort and the expense into giving a very high-touch, hands-on approach. Zappos has made their own space in the market by focusing on that customer service. It sounds like OnePitch is doing something very similar and carving out a place where you're talking to a person. You're going to have somebody with your best interest in mind trying to help you.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And that's one thing that folks can always expect, if they're getting an email, if they're calling us, whatever form of communication may be, there is 100% always a real person on the other end who's listening, providing feedback, and really taking note of what's being said and making sure that not only can they provide a great answer, but think about it a little bit and maybe ask if it's a publicist asking a question, then we're kind of taking that and putting it in the journalist ballpark and saying, hey, what are your thoughts about this? So we're experts to an extent, but we're making sure that we're taking the opinion of both sides and really, marrying the two to provide a great answer and to be able to provide a really solid direction.
So it sounds like that is going to be a good differentiator between OnePitch and any possible competitors that come along. If you look, say, 10 years into the future and you're looking at public relations and marketing a decade from now, what's changed? What kind of differences do you expect to come over the horizon?
I think we're seeing that change now, and really it's a blend of public relations and marketing. When I went to school, there was very specific differences between the two, and I think now more than ever, the both are becoming one in its own. I know plenty of people that didn't necessarily go to school for public relations or marketing, but one, if not both, are now in their job descriptions. And 2 to 3 years ago, it may not have been. And so I really see, again, the blend of those and the importance of, having a great marketing campaign that's backed up by solid public relations. Earned media is a really big topic, especially because we know how easy it is, to get exposure through paid stuff. But earned media is a great way for folks, again, to get the name and the story out there, but also to have a great marketing campaign that really kind of helps back up and support that story.
If you were going back to school, back to university today, whether undergrad or graduate, what are the top 3 classes you would take to prepare yourself for the next 5 or 10 years of your career?
Knowing where I'm at now, I would certainly focus a lot of my time on digital marketing and public relations. I would say first and foremost, one of the classes that I had taken digital marketing was a really general class, but we learned a lot about paid advertising, and that's really helpful because of the metrics that you're looking at and being able to understand and interpret who's coming to my ads, where are they coming from, what are the actions they're taking, why are they performing well, why are they not performing well. So I would say, first and foremost, having that solid foundation of marketing is super important, and understanding how to interpret those different metrics is really important. So the second class that I would recommend would most likely be something in communication, whether it be verbal or nonverbal. I don't have a specific course that I could mention, but I would say that no matter what, it's really important to understand how folks communicate and why they do it in a certain way. A lot of people joke around that communications is kind of a dead end degree and doesn't really get you anywhere, and that you really already know what you're learning and you're putting kind of a fancy word to it. But for myself, I really took that to heart and really tried to adopt the things that I learned into my communications, conversations, the marketing content that I'm producing, to really, again, educate folks and to clearly and concisely state my message. The last one that I would probably recommend, again, this is kind of one thing that I think is a little more biased for me, but I really enjoyed a class that I took on promotions and advertising, because it really gave me a really big kind of eye opener as to all the different moving parts that are involved in a campaign, as well as, what it really takes to have a solid campaign from start to end. And so I think for anybody who's interested in that field and who really wants to understand the work that's involved, the ins and the outs, how, this side of the marketing piece revolves around that side, again, that's something that I would highly recommend somebody take.
Fantastic. So looking at your workflow today, your team uses Slack. What other tools do you rely on? They can be hardware, software, analog, digital, it doesn't matter. So what else is in your toolbox that is necessary? Oh,
first and foremost, my calendar. I use my calendar for everything. If you were to take a look at it now, or anybody who were to take a look at it, they'd probably think I was crazy, because essentially that's my to-do list for the day. And it helps me stay on track. It helps me, remind myself of things that I need to do. And it also is kind of a good time management tool, because it kind of allows me to say, okay, I'm going to block out an hour to work on this, or I've got 30 minutes for this phone call with this person, and I really can't go over that because I've got to get something done right after. So again, I think for task and time management, my digital calendars is the most important tool in my playbook. I would say secondary to that, thinking about work-related stuff, HubSpot is by far the second most important tool for me and my team right now, especially since we're continuing to onboard new customers. We have to have a solid system that helps us organize and manage everyone. And, at first we didn't have a ton of users, so we were using something like Google Docs, which was, easy, but that's certainly not a scalable option. And I would say, hands down, without HubSpot, I would be pulling my hair out, needless to say.
That's terrific. Use HubSpot for customer relationship management. What tools do you use for project management?
Right now, we're actually using this really cool tool. It's called Trello. It's more of an individual, the way we use it is more individually based with projects, but it's a really, really simple tool. It's really helpful. One of the reasons that I am so passionate, or essentially why I love it so much, is that it's not overloaded with a ton of visuals and a ton of stuff that, you need to kind of build out and, make really fancy. If you want to use it at the most basic level, then you can use it as in that sense. And if you want to get fancy and incorporate, the fancy images and colors and all that, then you can do that. And the one other thing that I really love about it is that it integrates with Slack. So that's one thing that we're pretty big on is when we're looking at tools to make sure they integrate with the ones that we currently use. And so for having Trello integrating with Slack, I can touch base with people on a specific task. I don't need to go from the messaging back to the platform. I can have it all in one nice, convenient place.
And everything stays synced up across platforms, across applications.
Yeah, exactly. Which is, when each of us are working on, a dozen different things, it's super helpful, obviously, to stay on track, but just to have a very simplified way of being able to monitor that as well as have conversations about what we're working on.
Excellent. Excellent. In this conversation, we've sort of nibbled around the edges of OnePitch. But now let's focus on it. OnePitch was designed to solve a fundamental problem that both publicists and journalists experience. Tell me about that problem and tell me about the approach that you guys have come up with.
Certainly. So I think the problem really stems from a lack of relevancy and quality. And really that revolves around the way people are trying to get in touch with one another, as well as the messages that they're trying to get out there, or the stories that they're trying to pitch. With OnePitch, what we've really done and what we've taken in a great pride in focusing on is we're reducing a ton of time that folks have to spend researching contacts, building a media list, building out a message, and then dispersing that message across their list. We've removed that whole process completely. And essentially what we've done is we have a template that we've created that is very simple. It's a couple of bullet points. It asks you one bullet for what your pitch is about. It then asks for 3 bullets to explain why your most ideal media contact would pursue this story. And we've gotten a ton of feedback from each user base, publicists and journalists. And at the end of the day, what everybody kind of agreed upon was messaging just needs to be more simplified and more direct. So now that we've kind of crossed off that on the list, then what we have to look at is, okay, how are these people getting in touch with one another? And what we notice is that email is effective, but it's being abused. And you can read countless articles of journalists that have pulled up 100 emails in their inbox, and none of them are relevant to the things that they write about. I was talking with somebody a couple of days ago, and they're like, yeah, I received this pitch for VR, and it was VR for a movie company. And I write about VR apps for mobile. So it's completely separate from what I write about. But just because of the fact that it was VR, this person felt that it was relevant for me to cover. And using that example, what we've done is we've really built out a specific categorization process that we're continuing to fine tune, but that in essence really gets as specific as possible for what this pitch is in relation to what a journalist may write about. And what we really focused on for the beta, or at least for the initial launch, is the tech industry, and kind of looked at, okay, what are the most popular industries in the tech industry, and what are the most popular topics that are being talked about in there? And how can we essentially take those and create a mechanism to connect folks? And that's essentially what OnePitch does, is that if you're a publicist, you would go onto the platform, you would upload your pitch, categorize it based on the specific topics and industries that it relates to. Again, you would have your template where you would fill in your bullet points, and then the system does its magic and connects you with the journalists who have also gone on to the platform. And all they've done is just simply said, okay, I cover VR and I cover new products and new services and thought leadership and current events related to VR. So once they've done that and selected their specifics, the publicist has gone in and specified the specifics related to their pitch. If the system finds a match, then it sends them an email that only includes the specific pitches related exactly to what they want to write about or exactly what they've selected within their profile. And the reason that we've kind of gone that route is because we know there's platforms out there that do things similar to this, but they're a little more generalized and they're nowhere near as effective in connecting folks in the most relevant way, or essentially connecting them on the most relevant level. And so that's where we've gone in and said, okay, we're going to reduce the time, and we're also going to make sure that this is as relevant as possible for whoever is receiving that message.
It sounds to me like it allows publicists to be able to finely tune and focus their pitches, and for journalists to be able to take back their inboxes. so they're not getting spammed with things that are irrelevant.
Exactly. And we can't sit here and say that, to a journalist, you're not going to, you're going to not receive now 100 emails a day, because we can't prevent that from happening.
Right.
But what we can tell them is you are going to receive at least one email a day that's going to have only the most relevant things that you want to write about. And what we found is that is very enticing for folks. At the end of the day, everybody has relationships. Everybody has people they've worked with that they may prefer for a specific topic or for a specific story that they're writing. But the beauty of OnePitch, again, is that as a journalist, you can sign up and you can expect to receive the most relevant inquiries. You're not going to have an email that's going to essentially have 4 or 5 ones that might be something you're interested, but probably are not quite aligned. And we've gotten some great feedback from folks to essentially either validate that or say, hey, you guys could do a little more fine tuning. So we're definitely looking at the feedback from each user base and really wanting to make sure that we're not only providing a great service, but that it's also working effectively for these folks.
It sounds brilliant. So what's the pricing structure for it?
So at this time, we're running the beta, which is free for each user base. And we don't plan to implement a paid model until the full launch happens. So I don't necessarily have a price yet for folks. But again, the beta is free, and we're encouraging as many people on each user base, of course, that are more tech focused, to join and to try it out. And as I mentioned, we're constantly asking folks for feedback so that we can look at that and kind of inspire changes on the platform based off what our users are telling us, not just what we think is going to work or be more effective, but we're really listening to folks again and making those changes. And that's the beauty of being able to go on to free service, is to not only utilize it for free, potentially get some opportunities, but to actually have your input and your insight be put to good use.
That's quite compelling. So if somebody's interested, whether they're a publicist or a journalist, where do they go to sign up?
It's onepitch.co. And once they get to the homepage there's a sign up button they can click, and that will take them into either if they're a journalist or a publicist. Once they go through the sign up on the platform, they can submit a pitch immediately, or if they want to go back at a later time, they can do so. If you're a journalist and you want to go in and sign up, all you have to do is go in, you select your writing interests in your profile, and you never have to go onto the platform again unless you're updating an email or possibly changing those interests. Otherwise, you just, as a journalist, again, you sit back and you just wait for those emails to come in once a day.
Wow, so it does some of the work for you.
Exactly. Yep. That's another thing that we really pride ourselves on, is not requiring a lot of work from the journalist side. We're really masking the identity. We want to preserve the identity of journalists because we know they don't want to be bombarded with follow-ups and all that nonsense. So what we're really trying to do is make an effective platform that's relevant, but also non-invasive.
Right.
Again, we're really encouraging folks to hop on there and to use it, provide feedback, invite their friends. We have a really cool referral program that we're working on right now, where we're actually giving away $1,000 a month to anybody who simply shares their referral link with someone. As soon as you share it, you're automatically entered into our sweepstakes. And so it's, a way to not only get people on there, but again, to really show others that, hey, I've used this and it works.
So in addition to OnePitch, what else are you working on?
Got a couple of things that I'm working on the side here. I was actually recently a part of Tech Coast Angels, which is the largest angel capital firm in San Diego, and I believe in Southern California, if I'm not mistaken. And I was working with them on a volunteer analyst program, which was pretty cool. What we would do is we would sit in on pitches from startups, and essentially we would sit there with the angel investors and listen to a pitch. And then my team would then go in and do a due diligence, where we would go in and do kind of some market research and do an analysis of this company and the market they're entering into to determine if the angels should invest in them or not. So that was a really fun project, and it was really cool to get some insight on that, especially as I'm involved in a startup and kind of seeing how funding works and how that whole process takes shape from creating your company to determining, okay, we need to get funding, to then pitching somebody on funding. That was pretty cool.
Sounds like an intensive MBA type program that you're getting for free.
Yeah, no, and it's funny that you mentioned that, because a lot of the guys and girls that I was in the program with are all in school for their MBA, or they're in school getting a biochemistry degree, and for whatever reason they're involved in this because they have some biotech companies that are going through the pitch process. So it was a great learning experience, and so beneficial, and I'm so grateful just to have the opportunity to be in there and to to learn from the experts like that, because I would love to do that on my own one day.
Are there any other side projects that you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. One that I'm really, really excited to pursue, which we're hopefully going to be starting in the next month or within the start of the first of the year, is we've currently been working with the Young Leaders of America's initiative. Essentially, they take entrepreneurs, business owners from foreign countries, they bring them to the United States, and they have them work essentially at a startup or at a business that kind of aligns with one that they're running in their home country. The whole idea is just to expose them to how business is done in a different place, and to gain knowledge as far as the systems that are used and best practices, as well as just to bring them in to provide some input, whether it be strategically or on an advice level or whatever it may be. But one of the specific initiatives that we're working on with them is we are looking at partnering with their women's entrepreneurial program, where they specifically bring women from underdeveloped or underserved countries to the United States, and not necessarily bringing them to OnePitch or to our business, but we help them guide into either another workforce, or essentially we kind of act as like a mentor for them. I'm just really excited to be a part of the program. And I think it kind of stems back with my passion for helping people and connecting with them. And I'm just really grateful again to have connected with YLAI and to essentially have the opportunity to really make a difference in people's lives who wouldn't necessarily have that opportunity if it wasn't through them or through somebody who wants to help out.
That sounds terrifically empowering and something worthwhile pursuing. It sounds like it should pay off really well for the people participating in that, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And just to kind of elaborate off that really quickly, we actually did have a fellow here at OnePitch over the past month. He was from Curacao, which I'm sure some people are like, Curacao, where is that? I think there's a drink named after that. But he's been a huge part of our team. And, it's funny when you get somebody like that. Initially, we weren't quite sure, okay, what is his professional level, and, what does he work on? What is he familiar with? And within the first day of bringing him in here, we're like, holy cow, this guy is on a way different level than we ever expected. So it's not something that we know how important it is, but we also understand the caliber of people that are going through there. And so that's really cool, and it's also really reassuring to know that, you're not getting somebody who's just going to come in and just kind of go through the strokes because they want to get out of their, wherever they're at for a little bit. It's really somebody who wants to come in and really make a difference, whether it be for their company, for themselves, or for your company.
That sounds like a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Jered, before we wrap up here, what have I not asked you about, or what would you like to add?
I would definitely like to pose the question for the listeners, just that, if there's one thing that you could do better, what would it be and why? It's a question that I always love to ask my team and that I constantly will kind of bring up to them. And it's something that I don't necessarily think that a lot of us think about, but just one thing and being able to kind of make a difference or change just one thing that you really want to do better can spiral a whole mess of change in other areas that you'd never expect.
That sounds like a very powerful question. I'm going to put that in my toolbox if you don't mind.
Not a problem. Just use that, please. I encourage you.
Well, thank you. Jered, thanks again for joining us on Better PR Now. Before we sign off, how can listeners get in touch with you?
You can follow us on social media. We have OnePitch PR on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, as well as LinkedIn. If they want to get in touch and learn more about the platform, potentially get some type of demo, or chat with myself or one of our team members, they can always email us at info@onepitch.co. And if folks like hearing my voice and they want to chat with me over the phone, they're always more than welcome to call too. They can use our cool little vanity number here. It's 833-PITCHIN, or quite sure what those numbers translate to. It's 833-748-2446. And again, it's myself or one of our team members who answers that phone. So we're more than happy to help and provide assistance.
Fantastic. Jered, thank you so much for spending time with the Better PR Now listeners today. Hope to have you back on later and see how OnePitch is taken off and how it's transforming public relations and journalism.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure, Mark. Thanks so much for having me. It's really great to talk with you today, and I'm really looking forward to hopefully coming back and providing you with a ton of great news as well as some great feedback from our users to continue educating the folks who are listening right now. So again, thank you. I appreciate it.
And that wraps another episode of Better PR Now. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. I hope you got something useful out of it. If you like the show, please let us know, and most importantly, please tell a friend. See you next time. Take care.